Did you forget something?
No, it's on now.
Good morning. Good morning. Java Delight will uplift you. Stay tuned. The show is about to begin. Grab your coffee. Stay tuned. This show is about to begin.
All right. Well, we're totally in sync this morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you saw what just happened, you're wondering what just happened. We both have full control of the background, and at first he played the beginning intro without going live, and so instead of just putting it on live, I went to pick on him about it, but he then went and put it live. So it's been a fun little morning here. Hello, my name is Gavin Kerr. I am joined today by Brett Gordon. How you doing, Brett?
Doing awesome. Had a nice, relaxing weekend, actually. Didn't go out and party, didn't do any of that stuff. So to me, it was actually one of being able to just kind of recover and prepare for this week.
Nice. That sounds really nice. I spent the beginning of last week doing my relaxing when we got home from Vegas. So yesterday I went to a party. My boss for DJing, he lives out in kind of the woods, and he invited a bunch of us over to a house party. So I went there, and we had a water balloon fight that had like 1,500 water balloons. And I haven't had a water balloon fight since I was probably 11 years old. So about a decade now, and I gotta say it was the most fun I've had in a while. We had a water balloon fight, which immediately turned into a firework fight, where we had the snappets and like firecrackers and stuff like that. We were throwing at each other, and then I brought out my torches for fire eating, so I was doing that. And Eben's brother Dan has swords for whatever reason, and so he and Eben did a sword fight that they had near the choreography too. And then Eben busted out a whole bunch of lightsabers for a birthday party that he's going to be hosting soon. And so we had a huge lightsaber fight. And it's consisted mostly of us fighting each other. Was this giant party. It was a lot of fun. And then eventually the sun came down, and we all loaded into the bed of Eben's truck, and he started to drive us down to the cul-de-sac, down the street, so we could watch the fireworks. But immediately turned us around because, for whatever reason, something possessed me to start singing Hamilton. And everybody else in the back of the car started singing Hamilton. And so now Eben was worried that we were going to get the police called on us for all screaming at the top of our lungs. One of the songs from Hamilton, I can't remember which song it was. I may not live to see our glory. That one. Raise a Glass to Freedom. It's like the third song. It's the fourth song in the musical. I started singing that because I was like, we're all in the car together, and it's a patriotic day. This is kind of a patriotic song, and it was a blast. And then they had a bonfire after that. I stayed for a bit of that, talked to people more, hung out, and then I came back home to let the dog out.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like the good thing was didn't get in any trouble, didn't have the police called on you. So
Nope.
Overall, good, clean fun.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Not completely clean. That water balloon fight there, it got really muddy really fast. Yeah, but overall, it was a lot of fun. It was a great time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I was communicating with Brandon, and Brandon's still recovering from the trip that you guys had out here to Vegas. And I guess in his ripe old age, he wasn't able to handle it the same way you were. And he's spent a week fighting off something or fighting something, because I can't say he fought it off. He's still pretty much been down for the count. So he won't be on the show today. I know he wants to be a part of it tomorrow. He's saying he's tired of being tired, but
tired of being sick and sick of being tired.
Exactly. So we'll see how, and wishing him the best recovery possible, as soon as possible. I know that it's been rough. So
yeah, no, definitely he'll be all right. I think one, it had to deal with just the desert, and then two, it was a very long weekend, and for him specifically, it was a stressful weekend between the drive and the events and everything like that. He's been working very, very hard. So this was his body telling him, "Hey, slow down. You need rest." Yeah. I hope that I don't get sick with anything, just because yesterday I got eaten alive by mosquitoes. I am riddled in bites. So hopefully I don't catch malaria or anything like that. That'd be rather unfortunate.
Yeah, malaria, West Nile virus, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Those in the comments section who are watching right now, should go ahead and tell us what you did and how you spent your 4th of July. I hope it was a great one.
Yeah, let us know how you're doing out there and what you did. And, we're kind of free flowing this morning. So I'd love to hear, some of the things that other people did for the weekend. The one thing that I will say about the weekend is that, it was the 4th of July, and we do have the picnics and the barbecues and the fireworks and all that kind of stuff. But oftentimes we don't go back to, what it really signifies, and the Declaration of Independence and, our independence from Britain and so forth. And, now even the 4th of July is becoming very politicized. I was reading some things out there about, different groups that were not wanting to, say that, the 4th of July is of any significant meaning to them because of, who they are. And I think that, granted, there was a lot of things that needed to be addressed back in those days as we're trying to start a brand new country. And remember that a lot of the people that came over here were people that were kind of thrown out of Britain. Same as Australia. Australia was founded by the same kind of,
Wasn't Australia founded by the prisoners?
Yeah, but so were a lot of the people that came to the United States. They were not. They were kind of the unwanted, a lot of them. So to be able to come together and form a union built upon the needs and desires and controlled and governed by the people for the people. Granted, there was also a lot of things going on back then in terms of, even back then there was slavery. They were taking the land away from the Indians. All that kind of stuff was happening at the same time. But had there not been a start, there would not be an opportunity to even talk about that today.
Yeah.
And I think that, you need to recognize that steps need to be taken in order to go from one place and hopefully continue to progress to become a better place. And that's what we need to be recognizing, and we need to be coming together and not continuing to try to divide. A divided nation is a nation that can be conquered. A divided nation is one that, you're not going to have the same energy to overcome, because you're always looking for differences as opposed to what's in common. And by far, we have more of what's in common, even if you're talking about, the immigrants that have come here, or the Native Americans. I mean, when you talk about the Native Americans and the plight that they were put in, and, basically their land was taken, they were put into reservations and so forth. But still, if you take a look at their participation per capita in their participation in the military, they are by far the greatest per capita members and voluntarily joining the military of any group that's out there. And yet they are also the ones that I say, had probably the greatest challenges, in that they were pushed into specific areas and kept there. So what we need to do is focus on coming together, focus on the 4th of July being a celebration of a union, and that union continues to grow stronger, as opposed to trying to look at opportunities to bring out what divides us.
Yeah, well,
I think Hamilton actually is a really good example of how you can take a time period in an event and change it in a way that is positive and brings out not only the differences, but the commonality in a way that is extremely powerful. I mean, they've taken that and they've moved it into, all people of color primarily doing Hamilton. And I think that that's a phenomenal way of being able to look at opportunities to bring together, to change the storyline, to make that story something that resonates with others and brings groups together, as opposed to dividing them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, absolutely. And one of the things with Hamilton specifically is I can never see it being casted by anybody else. I know that they have understudies, they have a B cast that takes over either when people aren't available or sick or whatever the cause may be. But that original cast, it was so well put together. Like, I couldn't think of anybody else who would play George Washington that well. I couldn't think of anybody else who would have that sort of that frame that the actor who played him did, that masculine, that leadership frame. I couldn't see anybody else taking over that. So I really do did love the casting of Hamilton. I just thought that it was very well done as far as skill and presence wise goes. And then as far as I've seen posts on social media about 4th of July and stuff, and it's like it'll be posts of like a whole bunch of dead Native Americans will say, remember what you're really celebrating. And in all honesty, that's not what it's about. I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, just because the 4th of July specifically is celebrating its independence from Great Britain. So if they had a bunch of dead British soldiers and the person was trying to advocate that war is wrong or something like that, then I would be like, all right, I can understand where they're coming from. That has a better connection. But to just say that because it's an American holiday and then say that means that it's associated with killing Native Americans, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think it's a bit cherry picking. Not to say that it didn't happen, because it most certainly did, absolutely. But that's not what the 4th of July itself is about.
Well, and if you look at it, the Native Americans are on both sides, but actually one of the reasons that the Americans we won is because we actually fought the way that we were taught.
Oh, the guerrilla warfare tactics. Absolutely. That's what got our asses kicked by, because in all honesty, if we didn't have the drugs that we did and the more advanced technology that we did, the Native Americans probably would have won. Like, they were kicking our ass left and right, but the fact that we had guns and we brought a lot of disease as well, that's what really ended up winning it for us, in my personal opinion. Because then look at Vietnam, for instance. They used guerrilla warfare tactics against us, and the outcome wasn't very clean. We'll just say that it wasn't a very, very clean win either way, it ended up turning to chemical warfare. It,
Well,
it was a hell of a nasty
we
battle.
didn't win.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and I think that, and that's not even really what I was talking about, because the Native Americans actually, they are a tremendous contribution. And I didn't see many posts that way, but I did see others where they were, saying they don't recognize the 4th of July as
Yes.
Independence Day. It was
CK
one where
Ford.
they say, if I only recognize Juneteenth or something like that as true independence. And there's different levels and different things of being independent, but Juneteenth wouldn't have been Juneteenth if it wouldn't have been for the 4th of July. So those are the things that we need to just recognize, steps along the way, and continue to try to come together as opposed to divide. And, in war, as CK talks about, nobody really wins in war. And that's really true. It's something where there's always something left behind that's very negative.
Yeah.
And, with us leaving Afghanistan now, it's been 20 years. It's been longer than Vietnam. And what did we really accomplish? Basically nothing, except for a lot of death and destruction on both sides. A lot of our military members that have come back from there, as you hear, have come back with post-traumatic stress syndrome, things along those lines. The actual deaths from a war tend to always understate the true devastation of a war. And the soldiers that come back and then commit suicide or have PTSD or have, physical and mental challenges and disabilities because of what they experienced in the war. So, there's a lot of things that were given in order to get to the point where we are today as the United States. And I would tend to say that in the past, well, maybe since even I joined the military back in 1984, I have seen a lot of division come into this country, and the division is coming more and more to the forefront, which I think we need to recognize that, yes, there are a lot of things that we need to improve upon, but the only way that we're going to improve upon them is to improve upon them together, as opposed to try to divide and separate and isolate and cancel and all those other things that actually are happening today that create a bigger divide. And I can guarantee, when you take a look at countries like China and and Russia, and why they control the internet and why they control communications and how they control people, it's all about, by limiting the amount of dissension, you are able to then better control society. And I don't go along with that whole concept of control like that. We have to do that. We have to bring ourselves together through those different forms of media, as opposed to use them to divide us. So just something to be aware of. 4th of July hopefully was really good for everybody's family. And I know that a lot of people have today off, because today I think is when the national holiday is.
Yeah, that actually confuses me. So, because I heard about that, I heard some people when I was working at the bar on Saturday hosting karaoke, I heard some people who were upset that certain places were closed on today. Why? Do you know why they are closed today?
Yeah, because the 4th of July was on a weekend.
Yeah.
Then the national holiday gets celebrated either on a Friday or a Monday. And I think that because it was Sunday, it's being, recognized as Monday. If it were Saturday, it might have been the 3rd of July that people were off. So, or the day before.
Yeah.
So that's why things are closed today. It is about
Okay.
the national holiday, and it's tied to a lot of the labor relations and so forth in order to be able to give and recognize up to, I don't know how many federal holidays are kind of agreed upon by the larger labor unions
Yeah.
and business and things like that.
So basically, make sure that everybody gets that day to stay home with their family and enjoy their time together.
Yeah, exactly. If the 4th of July is on a Monday, then it's the Monday. It's actually the 4th that everybody's off. But when it's on a weekend, it's either the day before or the day after.
Yeah. Nice, nice. All right, I like that. I can understand that. I just remembered. I think there's supposed to be a fair this week in my town.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're having it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I know the cities around us have already had theirs. The home days fairs. I know. I want to say Strongsville had theirs already. Berea had theirs a couple nights ago, and then Brook Park I know always does it after the 4th of July. So I'm gonna have to look that up because it's been a while, and that sounds like an absolute blast. In all honesty, one of my favorite things is the lemonade. That fresh squeezed lemonade you get in that
Yeah.
huge plastic cup. Yeah, it has an offensive amount of sugar in it. It's fun.
Yeah, I used to love going to the fair when I grew up in excuse me, in northern Illinois. The Wisconsin State Fair is the one that we would go to because it was up in Milwaukee, which was a lot closer to us than the Illinois State Fair, which was down mid-state Illinois. So we used to go up there, and Wisconsin, known for their dairy products and everything. One of the things that you would always want to get was these fresh, what do you call them? The cream-filled cream puffs.
Okay, I was thinking eclairs.
No, cream puffs was one of the things that I used to remember, and then for sure the beer, because it was always sponsored by the breweries that were up there. The Miller breweries, the Pabst, all of those breweries had their own stages where you would have the bands playing and things. So it was a great place to go for that. And haven't had a chance to really go to one of those. The last fairs that I've been to were kind of the San Diego County Fair in California, and actually they have a pretty good fair. I mean, I enjoyed going down there and participating. Though as you get to be older and you can actually drink, you got to be careful on that drive home.
Yeah, no, I believe it, especially being out in the hot sun. You're in the hot sun all day. You get a beer, you cool off, you're refreshed, and then you get another beer, and then another one, and then
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully you have the fair. I think that this year everything is starting to kind of come back. I won't say it's getting back to normal, but I say that we are getting back to where we can actually interact with people. And I know Vegas was crazy. I did not go and participate. One of the reasons I didn't participate is I drove to downtown Vegas, not the Strip, but to downtown.
Yeah.
And the parking was horrendous. And I just said, screw this crap. I'm just going to go home. I don't want to even deal with the parking situation down there.
Vegas was nuts. I forgot that 2020 was even ever a thing. Like, it felt like we got to Vegas and we were in our own little world, essentially, is what it felt like. Like, there were a couple people. The people who were wearing masks were mostly, almost exclusively, the people who were working at the casinos. And at that point, it just felt like an aesthetic. It just felt like it was part of the uniform to me.
Yeah, and that's the reason I wanted to actually go downtown and participate. Or listen to the bands and stuff, because there are no masks in general anymore. Yeah. So it would have felt more like the way that I like it, where I can really observe people and see their faces and watch their interactions and things, which is what I enjoy doing. I don't care if I talk to them. I just want to watch them.
Do you feel like people are going to start having more exaggerated facial expressions because they've had a mask on for the last year and aren't as self-aware about what their face is doing anymore?
Well, that's interesting. I would really kind of like to see that, because you're right. Before, people used to be able to kind of not have to worry about the faces that they were making when they were communicating, because it was behind the mask, and now it's out in the open. So we'll have to see. I know that there's women in particular, but anybody who wore makeup in the past, they kind of stopped wearing a lot of makeup because behind the mask, all it does is get the mask messed up. It's messes up your makeup and so forth. So now they're back to wearing makeup, or maybe they've even recognized that I don't need to wear so much makeup because it hasn't been part of the social area for almost a year and a half.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I've always wondered about, because I've known a lot of women who wear a lot of makeup and they're very pretty, and then they take it off and their face, it looks like worn or almost like a ghost. But then I know some women who don't wear any makeup hardly ever, and they have extreme natural beauty. And then most men don't typically wear makeup, and if they do, then it's not anything very, very noticeable or a whole lot. Unless they're doing like a drag or a theater show or something like that. But the average like day-to-day makeup, it would be close to nothing. And for the most part, they have that same kind of life to their face. So part of me wonders what all is in makeup that causes the just that sort of like bare look.
Yeah, well, I mean? Not everybody is as gorgeous as Brian. So Brian's not, he never wears makeup.
Yeah, he never wears makeup, and he's a total babe. Like, he's got the flush cheeks and the thick eyelashes and the totally done-up eyebrows. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm just looking forward to the day that it's driving down the road and I get to see Brian in his truck. I'll probably have to pull over. I'm so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand. But like that was something that always made me wonder is like you said, maybe they'll start going back to that, where women don't wear quite as much makeup because their faces had time to recover from the amount of makeup they do wear, if they do wear a lot of it. Or maybe they start wearing a little bit more just because now they're extra self-conscious, like, oh, no one's seen my face in so long. Let me make sure like I have it put on.
Well, I know I've talked to some women, that are starting to put makeup back on, and they're like, my face is breaking out because their face isn't used to that anymore. And
their pores are all nice and empty, and then they're clogging them again.
Yeah, I know. When I was working as a consultant, I had one project that was at Cody Fragrances, and Cody has a lot of different lines of fragrances and makeup and things along those lines. And the interesting thing about that is, it's almost kind of like snake oil, in that they have a rail line that comes up to their manufacturing facility because of the chemicals that they're using to make makeup comes in these big, tank cars on trains. And those, they really are, pretty harsh chemicals that come together to make up the makeup.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about colognes and fragrances and stuff, a big part of that are, some sort of alcohols or the majority of the product itself is something that's relatively, I mean, you wouldn't want to just put those chemicals on your skin if you read what the chemicals are. And if you read what's in those, you'll see. But I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Here come, these tank cars full of chemicals to a fragrance and makeup place where they then take them and mix them and match them and put all this stuff together and then sell them for, 10, 100 times or more of the cost of the materials for sure.
Oh, cologne is ridiculously expensive. I know how expensive it was because I've never bought cologne. It's always been given to me either as like a hand-me-down, like a friend got a new bottle of cologne and didn't want the rest of their old bottle, or like my stepdad like gave me like his old cologne when he got a new bottle, or the bottle that I have right now, which is actually a very, very nice, expensive bottle. I don't remember the name of it though. I've had it for months now. I've had it since Christmas, and I still don't know the damn name of it. But it's like this big, and it's like this big, just a little bottle here, and I think it was like at least $80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
but it works. Smells good. I know when I put it on, if I got like somebody like dancing with me, that's the first thing they tell me. They're like, "I like your cologne." I'm like, yeah, I bet you do. You better. It was expensive.
Exactly. And it's interesting that we're talking about makeup and so forth because this week in One Square at a Time, I am going to be dropping
really quick.
Have dropped actually.
Ladies and gentlemen, today is Monday. I would like to introduce our regular guest, Brett Gordon.
All right, everybody, this is who we're dropping. When we're talking about makeup, here's makeup. We're talking about the Joker this week. And we're actually going to be pulling from the different eras of the Joker, from when it was Cesar Romero to Jack Nicholson to Heath Ledger, and also to Joaquin Phoenix, and how they portrayed the characters differently based on the time, based on the actor. It was
not Jared Leto. We don't talk about that Joker.
Who?
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, we focused on those four. There are others, but we focused on those four and talked about the different ways that a villain has superpowers as well. Absolutely. And if you haven't watched a full episode of One Square at a Time yet, I highly encourage you to watch this one. We talk about how each one of these different versions of the Joker kind of are portrayed in significantly different ways. And the storyline is actually different in a lot of these Jokers in terms of how the Joker originated, what caused the Joker to become the maniacal laughing character that they were. What were the challenges that brought them to this to become the evil villain, and why, and what was going on in the back of their minds. And the interesting thing, I talked about it and I talk about it in the review that Brandon and I did, is to a certain degree, each one talks about things or brings up some things that are kind of more of what was in the news or what was going on in the background in the time that they actually portrayed the character. The original one that I remember was Cesar Romero on the Batman TV show, where you're coming back at the same bat time, same bat channel. And the character there was a little bit more on the funny side.
Yeah.
But still had a maniacal laugh, still had a very had a big challenge with the institution being the police department and Metropolis, or whoever you want to, Gotham City, I should say, not Metropolis, that's Superman. Gotham City, and how big crime fought big police force, or the way that the groups were portrayed back then, and each one of these characters, especially when you're looking at Nicholson, who brings Jack Nicholson into the picture, and he's amazing at playing these really weird parts, right? From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to
he's just got that crazy look in his eye.
Yeah. I mean,
and when he smiles, when he does that I call it a dead smile, when your eyes don't really show any sort of expression, but your mouth does. Just that.
Yeah, I mean, just the way he's looking, in this picture is Jack Nicholson coming through the character.
Yeah.
And then you take a look at somebody like Heath Ledger.
Yes.
And Heath Ledger, I remember him from being in more of the sweet movies, or
romance,
or even Brokeback
like
Mountain or something like that.
Yep.
Where this character was really kind of dark and deep, and it, according to him and according to others, he never really got into his character, like into the character himself. But the fact that it was right after they finished filming, pretty much, that he took his life.
Yeah.
There's a question as to, how much, if it wasn't him getting into the character, it was maybe the character getting into him and bringing out some other challenges that he was having in his life that became more prominent, to the point that he ended up taking his own life. And then you have, Joaquin Phoenix playing this role, which, is really, really deep in terms of how mental illness is looked at today or not looked at today. And look at his background in terms of, his brother, who also committed suicide. So,
well, Joaquin also lost an extreme amount of weight extremely fast for that role as well. Like, he got really, really thin for that.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely had in mind what this role was, and he put his body, sacrificed his body to get to that point where it just was extremely obvious. And this is what I think is so good about talking about the Joker. So the Joker, in all these different forms, has some common threads that go through there. And one of the threads that I talk about is being hyper observant.
Yeah.
They all were extremely detailed in what they picked up, extremely detailed in the plans that they started to put into place. They sense the world without as many filters as others may have. Their ability to sense the energy of those around them oftentimes, became a part of them. And that's what we talk about in this episode. We talk about how that hyper observant person can become overwhelmed by the things that are happening around them. Normally, the mind chunks things together. We have our belief systems. We have different ways that we can process information, process stimulus and stimuli in ways that enable us to avoid that feeling of overwhelm. But oftentimes, people that have challenges with mental health are receiving this energy constantly. The filters are not functioning the way that others might filter. The chunking of information tends to be chunked together differently. And a lot of it has to do with our reticular activating system. And we've talked about this in the past, but that's that whole system in your brain or in your mind, if you want to call it that, where when you start to focus on something in your mind, you start to see more examples of that in life. So if you're starting to think that life is a challenge, or that life is difficult, or that life is not worth living, your mind starts to find things around you that justify that validate that, because the one thing that your mind is always trying to do is maintain its identity. And your identity oftentimes starts going in this direction. When your identity goes in that direction, then your actions follow that, and actions lead to reactions, and then those reactions reinforce what you were thinking, and you can get into this spiral, which can take you in the direction of a Joaquin Phoenix character, or the Heath Ledger character, especially even the Jack Nicholson. The Cesar Romero being a little bit different, only because I don't think that, for the most part, we got as much of the backstory. It wasn't as dark a character as the others.
Well, it was the time that it was released, and that's what the comics were. They were coming out. It was a lot of it was a lot more like Looney Tune kind of shenanigans and tactics in the comics, rather than the dark and the gore that we see now.
Yeah, they really did touch on a lot of this stuff, as, like the Joker or the Riddler, which was Frank Gorshin back in the time, which, is probably way before you remember, or the Catwoman, which was actually a few different women that portrayed the character. In the Batman
someone new
series.
has played Catwoman in every single Batman rendition there's been.
Well, and there were like 3 of them in the Batman series. There was Lee Merriweather. There was, oh man, I should remember these. But anyhow, there was 3 different ones that actually were in the Batman TV series. So they did touch upon these things, but they didn't go as dark as we go today. I think that one of the things, and one of the reasons I didn't watch a lot of the Batman movies that came out recently until I really started looking into the Joker here, or the Penguin, which is another character or villain that we go through. I didn't watch these movies because they got so dark. And I'm not really one who enjoys watching the dark movies, but I'll tell you, by watching these, it brought out things, and I learned so much from it on a part of life that others oftentimes live that I didn't experience. So that's really, really important, particularly because of what I do with leadership and helping people, and life and leadership, to really start to gain more of a different perspective through the darkness of the movies and the way that they were portrayed. Because I grew up with, Batman and Robin and the Batmobile and all that stuff, as you were saying, is almost more of the Looney Tune cartoon kind of a thing, as opposed to the deep dark side that came out later on.
So why do you think the Joker has become such an iconic character and such an intimidating role? Look at I'm going to bring him up here. Look at Jared Leto. He went to extremes to try to capture the character and become the Joker. And while a lot of it is to blame the directors for the screen time and the script and everything, and then the design for the costume, for whatever reason, his portrayal of the character just did not stick with people. And there was so much expectation put around this character now that Joaquin Phoenix had for whatever reason, he had extremely big shoes to fill. And this was even before Heath Ledger became the Joker. We had Jack, like you said, Jack Nicholson. He was the Joker for the longest time, and nobody was really brave enough to tackle that role either as a director or as an actor. So why do you think he became such an iconic character, even though he is such a dark villain?
I think, and it goes along again with kind of as we have, society has progressed, but I think it's because there is this darkness in everybody.
Yeah.
We all have a dark side.
Yeah.
And we all can feel that at times. And usually the difference between those that are normal, which there is no such thing as a normal person.
Yeah, it's relative. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the amount of time that you spend in this darkness tends to be more of a momentary part of your life or a momentary part of your day than all of your day, all of your life. And I think that what the Joker character does is it really touches upon that darkness that we have, those times that we feel so insecure, those times that we feel like lashing out, those times that we feel like we're being teased or we're being, we're not able to experience the life that we want to experience or the life that we imagine we should experience. And when those things don't come together, that's when we really start to feel that Joker within us. And I think that's why it's become such an iconic villain, probably more so than just about any other villain in modern age. The Joker really is the one that people will point to and the one that they can relate to in one way or another. And different people will relate to a different version of the Joker more than another, either because of, when they saw it, the feelings that they had at the time that they saw it, the feelings that came out when they saw it. But, for others who didn't even see the movie, they become very intimidated by
Hey, what's up?
The by the representation or the portrayal of the Joker by these different actors and the scripts. And if you look at the way Jack Nicholson or Heath Ledger or Joaquin Phoenix really played this part, it was not just the script. They brought their version of how they felt the Joker was touching upon them, touching upon things in their lives, touching upon the things that were happening at the time that came out in their character representation or portrayal that was not necessarily written into the script. There was a lot of interplay between the actors and the writers and so forth as they were really bringing more of that character and developing that character in a way that the actor felt the script should be presented. So I think that the because of that, the general public really started to get into it, and it was interesting because it was like the Dark Knight, and so forth. Even Batman got really dark.
Yeah.
And so
have you seen the trailer for the newest Batman?
No, I haven't.
Yes. I can't remember the name of the actor. It was the gentleman who played Edward in Twilight, but he will be playing Batman, and it's by far looks like it's going to be the most dark and gritty one that we've seen yet. They're continuing to go down that path and let that shadow sort of take over.
Yeah, I think that, in general, that tends to be kind of a way to that people are being attracted to that. And I think, again, it's because there's a lot of challenges in life today.
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah,
thank
there
you.
you go.
Thank
Robert
you, Nathan.
Pattinson. Thanks, Nathan. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
That dark side is still very prominent in life today still.
Yeah.
but maybe behind the scenes. I think that a lot of what we're experiencing in our world today were feelings and so forth that were behind the scenes, but were not acceptable to talk about. Now they're coming out. And
do you think that there's any merit to some of the things that the Joker would say about a society or government or just basic people in general that people could relate to? Like one of the things he was talking to, when he's talking to Batman when he is in the interrogation room in the Dark Knight trilogy, he's talking to him and saying about how they only have Batman right now because they need him. But as soon as they need him, they're going to cast him away like every other freak. As soon as you take away their luxuries and their sense of security, they turn straight back to the animals that society naturally is, and they hurt and corrupt and destroy each other.
yeah, well, I think that there's a lot of the Joker that is really part of today's life. In fact, from the Joaquin Phoenix version when he's Arthur, one of the quotes that I picked up out of there was, the worst part about having mental illness is people expect you to behave as if you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's really poignant and hits upon the way that, society tends to look at the normal and say that if you're outside the normal, then you need to conform to the normal. Yeah. And the normal for each and every person is different. There are some accepted things that, you normally think about as normal, like you don't go out and just kill someone on the street and things along those lines. But normal in and of itself is a very subjective and personal representation. So I think that that's one of the things that I picked up. There were a few others like Batman. This is I think I can't remember which one it was, but Batman is talking to the reporter, Vicky Vale. I think it was Jack Nicholson, maybe. And in reference to the Joker, she's saying, people are saying he's psychotic.
Yeah.
And Vicky says to Batman, some people say the same about you.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this different psychosis to a certain extent, especially in these newer versions, these darker versions of Batman, where who's the villain and who's not, or what are the commonalities between the villain and the hero. And that's why we really started, Brandon and I were really starting to point out, what it is about the superpowers and the fact that the superpower of the villain can also be the same superpower of the hero. Yeah. And that sometimes you can't tell the difference between how that superpower is being used by the hero and the villain. And I think that that's another thing that really resonates with people, is how really your superpower and how you use it is situational.
Yeah.
Just like I say, my leadership style is situational. Depending on what's going on at the time, you may become, an authoritarian leader as opposed to a laissez-faire leader, or, a democratic leader versus an autocratic leader. Why? Because the situation deems that being the one that might best fit the scenario. And the same thing goes for the superpowers between a villain and a hero. And that's why I think we point a lot of this stuff out when we're going through it. Actually, it was one of the longer versions of One Square at a Time. I think it ran almost an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah. Because we just started to really get into it and talk about these different things. And, one of the things that goes along with this hyper observant is also for those out there that are kind of empaths or know of empaths. Empaths can feel the energy around them. And oftentimes they feel it to a point that it drives them into some darkness that they have to clear from themselves. And if they don't know how to clear that energy from themselves, they can spiral down. And I know even my girlfriend, she's a medicine woman, and she goes into sweat lodges, and part of that role of the medicine person in there is to help to cleanse, but also oftentimes absorb the energies that are around them. And they have to be able to know how to cleanse themselves of that energy, because it's very, I mean, the whole reason for sweat lodges oftentimes is to bring these types of things out. Yeah. So you need to be able to do that. And empaths are one of the, another type of person like that, where they can absorb all this negative energy. And if they don't know how to clear it, they have real challenges. And some of the best energy workers, if you get a chance to really know them, if they talk about themselves, oftentimes they have to go into a seclusion or do something for days or even weeks to reground themselves because of the energy that they're absorbing on a daily basis, or they're absorbing as they're helping others to get through their challenges.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think that Hollywood lately, more than ever, has been kind of holding a mirror up to society through these villains by giving them almost sometimes sympathetic backstories, but other times understandable backstories, where you see that they're not, most of the time, they're not purely evil just for the sake of being evil. They have some sort of motivation. They have some sort of intention that in their mind is truly for a greater good. It is truly for some kind of, whether it is a personal greater good for themselves or a family, or for what they think society needs. But there's Hollywood, through these movies and through these backstories of these villains, are really showing that, you know, it's not all that black and white. It's not always that same, or that the situation you think it is.
Exactly. I'm going to bring something up here before our guest comes on, just so that can show it on the screen. Let's see if I can get it to a size it's going to be a little bit easier for everybody to see and still be on the screen here. Okay, this I'm going to share the screen again and talk about this quote, which I do in our recorded version as well. Here we go. So Grant Morrison, who produced some of the Batman stories, including like The Dark Knight, he's talking about the Joker, and as opposed to insanity, he brings up this concept of super sanity, a brilliant new modification of human perception. The Joker seems to have no control over sensory information he's receiving from the outside world. He can only cope with the chaotic barrage of input by going with the flow. That's why some days he's a mischievous clown, others a psychopathic killer. He has no real personality. He creates himself each day. I thought that was, an amazing observation of kind of what I was talking about, where you don't have these filters, you don't have these belief systems. And I always talk about questioning your belief systems, but the fact that if you have virtually none, or you allow the world to create those on a daily basis, you have a personality.
You set yourself up for dangerous outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, how many people each day do you think do that, though? Like, how many people throughout the day, they say, you hear it all the time now, especially, so they feed off the energy of a situation. They let the energy of other people, the energy of a situation control how they behave, how they react, and if they do become aware enough of it, how they respond. But typically it's how they react. They're not responding to anything. They're evaluating a situation and letting that sort of control who they are in that time.
Well, I think that, a lot of that has to do with our individual beliefs. I just put a link out there for everybody to take a look at as far as the show. But what it really is this is where you have, kind of your logic to control or bring into control some of the emotional responses. And as a result, I think some people today have gotten to the point where they're like, I get to use the F word, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And I really don't give a shit what others think or whether it's acceptable or not. And I think that to a certain extent, there's some value to that. And to another extent, they use it as an excuse for not really caring about others around them. They become very self-serving and feel that that's okay. So, it's...
Well, that typically comes when people are too much on the other extreme at first, when all they're doing is giving, and then something happens where they get burned, they get crossed, they get done wrong, and then after that they say, okay, I'm never helping anybody again, I'm never trusting anyone again, I'm never letting down these walls again, and that's when they become that callous, that cold.
Exactly. So I encourage everybody, watch the recorded version of One Square at a Time with Brandon and I, and then be ready for Thursday at 3:00 Pacific, 6:00 Eastern to actually interact with us live and talk about your feelings about these characters, about our review of the characters, about the superpower and the tool that we actually bring out regarding that. Because I think it can be an awesome discussion when we bring in a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah.
So now I'd like to introduce our guest today, who's Dr. Nathan, I want to say Gerowitz.
Yes.
All right. Who is a healer, a teacher, and author at Innate Life Chiropractic. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Biology from Carthage College and a Doctor of Chiropractic degree from Life University. He's continued his professional development and continues to bring in the most advanced research and techniques, ensuring he provides the best care to his patients and those he reaches out to. He's trained in classical and contemporary healing arts and serves children and adults with vitalistic chiropractic care. He's passionate about the well-being of others, and he brings that out in helps people to live in their bodies with more ease, grace, and connection. He's also founded Carthage World Relief, a nonprofit organization for clean water in developing world, and served in chiropractic missions to Nicaragua, Peru, and Brazil. So, without going into a whole lot more, he's also published his first book, Letters to Our Younger Selves, a combat for mindful living, with a couple of co-authors. So really looking forward to the conversation that we're going to get in. I think it's going to tie in really well with what we've been discussing on the Joker, and also on different ways that, people can deal with life and the challenges that we may have.
Absolutely.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hey,
how you doing, Dr. Nathan?
Today?
I'm doing great. How about you all?
Doing good.
Excellent.
You guys can hear me okay? The mic's working well?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm all about connection, so I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, I'm not getting any feedback. You good, Brett?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. May want to speak up just a hair, but otherwise, I think we're good.
I can do that.
Awesome,
All right.
awesome. So you have a hell of a resume. Where would you like to start?
Well, it's funny because there was so many juicy things that you two were just talking about with regards to the Joker and with regards to Batman and that whole dichotomy. And
If you'd like to touch on that, you're more than welcome to.
well, Gavin, you made a great point a minute ago before I hopped on about people giving to the point where they get burned and then having to come back. And one of the things that I teach on in the work that I do Vitalistic chiropractic here in my office. I also am classically trained in a shamanic form of healing and in a more new age form of metaphysical work. I teach a boundaries class, and one of the big components of boundaries, which also touches on what you were saying, Brett, about anyone picking up stuff from other people. But one of the big things about boundaries is being able to have boundaries between giving and receiving. Yeah. And one of the most unique things about our human experience is that we live in a world of duality, meaning just like you guys were talking about Batman, Joker, good, evil, light, dark. Yep. And I'm a big fan of the Dalai Lama, and he says you got to learn the rules so you can eventually break them effectively. But in this world of duality, part of it is giving and receiving. And oftentimes I find people are riding one of those two walls of their reality too much. Either they're riding that giving face of their reality where it's, here, take the shirt right off my back.
Yeah.
In which case they're spewing all of their vital life force energy towards other people. And I'm all about giving and being of service. Like, it's kind of the bulk of what I do with my time. Yeah. And I also have to be able to receive. Now, the flip side of that is people who are so on that receiving end of things, they're just a big energy suck or an energy vampire, which is part of why we have that depicted in our media so much, is because we have those two ends of the polarity. And what also is challenging is that because we live in this world of duality, there's also universal laws that govern it, one of which is that there's correspondence. So we've got right, we've got left, we've got masculine, we've got feminine, we've got light, we've got, and we can get seduced too much into either way. So finding there's a middle point in the middle part of our reality, which is where balance happens, which is where, and it's not a completely stagnant, but a dynamic balance. And part of it is if I want to give, I have to be willing to receive. In the world we live in, there's a law of dynamic exchange, which is that we have to be able to receive as well. So if I am going to facilitate healing for someone or facilitate greater levels of health, I have to be willing to receive that myself and also receive some form of energy exchange in return. Yeah. Or put it more poignantly, I can't love anyone more than I'm willing to receive love myself.
Yeah. Now, with the balance on it, let's say that this is balance right here. It's perfectly center. People, do they naturally lean one way or another and then have to consciously bring themselves to balance? Or are we do you believe we're naturally at balance, but then events in our life change our mind to where we start to lean one way or another?
I love the way you phrase that question. I would tend to favor the second option.
Okay.
Our natural, the most innate natural place within us is what I call the sweet spot, where it's the merging of your sacred heart of being connected to both ground and source at the same time, being in present time between past and future, and balance between giving and receiving, or harmony, so to speak.
Yeah.
And throughout our lives, we got stuff. I'll put it mildly. We got stuff. Yeah, and some of it is from our personal lineage, from our families, a lot of it from our families, from our mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, mass consciousness, the media we live in, the culture we live in. It's very different. I've traveled quite a bit. It's different in many different cultures around the world, but it's part of that. It's part of the uniqueness of being human, that we came here to experience all of these things, to learn from them, and also learn how to be both divine and human all at the same time. So we're divine human and human divine, if that makes any sort of sense.
No,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
definitely understand that.
You know, I always talk about, you know, we do live in a dichotomy, but really where we live is in the spectrum.
Yeah, it's very much a spectrum of things. Right,
and that, you know, that spectrum or that dichotomy is actually tends to be put into our minds, as you were saying, through our lineage. What it was that really, you know, when we had that perfectly formed mind and brain when we were just born, to having all the shit that gets fed into it from that point on, and that becomes our reality, which is not even a conscious choice on our part, but it becomes where we start to have that dichotomy.
Yeah, and you know, you think about, I just to respond to something you said, a lot of us have trauma just from the birth process. You know, the way I describe it in my office, because I take care of pregnant women, I take care of a lot of babies, that I don't care that even if you had a home birth, a home water birth with 4 doulas, 6 midwives, and Kenny G playing live jazz in the corner to relax you, there is a reason it is called labor. It is a very intense process. I don't know if either of you two have kids, but if you do, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Not yet, but
if nothing else,
I've seen it. I've seen the process.
Yeah. And if nothing else, you're the result of birth. So you know what I'm talking about. And that's under the best of most peaceful possible circumstances, in my opinion. And so there's a lot that comes just from that entry point into the world. And a lot, I think the most recent study I saw was that 98% of babies have some sort of interference buildup from that process, physiologically.
Yeah. What about C-sections?
The C-section is also has a mass, can have a massive effect. The way I like to describe it is that when I have parents come into my office, I will look at the parents and say, if after baby is born, C-section, vaginal birth, or even a home birth, but especially if it's in a hospital setting, if I were to come into the hospital room and visit you all, and then I grabbed your baby's head and neck and did to it what the doctors just did, you would kill me, because it's a lot of tension and torque. Now, and I'm not denying the fact that there are times that is exceptionally needed and appropriate in case of an emergency. Oftentimes, though, even so, it's just a lot of pressure. And so the more interventions that there are, typically, the more physiological interference there is, and the greater the decrease of the breath of life through the baby. Not to mention, also tends to make it a more challenging recovery process for the mom, because the pregnancy may be over, the recovery begins, and it's often called the 4th trimester.
Yeah.
From what I see working with people, it typically is an 8 to 9 month process to recover from childbirth, to get yourself back to to get yourself into whatever your new alignment is. Does that make sense?
The physical and mental shape.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's a really beautiful and, in my opinion, critical time for some of the work that I do to help for the baby to interface with the world. It's learning constantly how none of this was in the brochure. Everything we've been talking about, the stuff, none of it was in the brochure. And especially the babies being born today, from what I see and what many of my colleagues see, are just coming in at such a high level of sensitivity, awareness, and consciousness that it can be very overwhelming to the brain, to the nerve system, which is where we start the steamroll of accumulating that stuff, if it didn't happen in the womb from epigenetic sources.
So it almost seems to me like then trauma is the price of admission for life, and that first initial trauma of birth is the rite of passage.
I've never heard it phrased that way, but I get where you're coming from. Totally. Yeah, it's the way I would view it is that we live in we can choose the paradigm we live in. Yeah. And for most people, especially Mama Gotti, I apologize.
Yeah, Mama Gotti.
Yes, Mama Gotti. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Thank you. With regards to the hormone changes that happen from conception all the way through the end of breastfeeding. And with regards to the trauma, in my opinion, there's 2 different paradigms to choose to live in with regards to growth, development, life, healing, health. One is based on stress, drama, trauma, and fear. The other is based on it being safe, gentle, easy, loving, joyful. Does not mean there are not challenges in that paradigm. There are massive amounts of challenges in that paradigm. One being most people don't live in that paradigm, but it is part of it is Brett said it beautifully, that the paradigms we choose to live in, the belief systems we accumulate, will color our experience. They will change how mentally, just how we focus, emotionally, how we either react or respond, physically, the way our body adapts or not. And it will also change the way that we manifest our reality if we have different, depending on the belief system we have. If we have belief systems that are at what I'll loosely term a higher vibration, or more based on truth, or more based on light, in big capital letters, light, then it'll change the way we create our reality. And so that's one of the main things I do with people is how do we gently reprogram, rewire things, rewrite things.
And I think that's so critical, as like you said, we create our reality. I always emphasize that it's our perception, it's the meanings that we place on events in life that create our reality. Our reality doesn't necessarily reflect the actual events that occurred in life. It is the meanings that we placed on those events, the perceptions that we have of those events, and they are based upon our belief systems and our emotions at that time. I always say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder at that time. And it can change the next moment depending on circumstances that happen around you. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, the way to think about it, and for any of your listeners that might be kind of pondering what we're saying, hopefully, if any of you guys, and I know I have been in kind of a not a great romantic relationship, and then you get out of it, and you're like kind of recovering from it a little bit, and then you get enough distance on it, you can eventually go, oh, I learned a lot about myself and what I deserve and what I desire out of a relationship. There were a lot of gifts in that.
Yeah.
I just couldn't unwrap them at the time.
No, absolutely.
And how do we raise our vibration? Mama Gotti's got some good points to make today. Do you want? Would you like me to respond to Mama Gotti?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
First off, I love your name, Mama Gotti. Second off, there are many different ways to do it. One of the most natural ways we can do it is our breath. We are one of the only life forms out there that is can both be conscious and unconscious with our breath, in the sense that most likely Brett, Gavin, and myself have not been really paying attention to it for the last couple of minutes, but it's still happening. And I can also choose to breathe differently. And straight up, we don't breathe well for a couple different reasons. One, the more stressed we are, whether that is stress we are currently experiencing or stress that has become locked in our body, locked in our neurospinal system, that is constantly giving our brain feedback, it puts us into a stressed out fight or flight or sympathetic overdrive. And when that happens, we start breathing up here. It's a really weird quirk of our body that when we need more oxygen, we breathe up here. I have a theory as to why we do it, but that's what starts happening. So one of the most easy things we can do is, if you want to, put your hands over your belly button, overlapping them like so, and breathe into the diaphragm using into the belly. And as you breathe in, you want to push your belly into your hands so that way it expands the diaphragm. And then you'll breathe into using the intercostal muscles or the muscles between your rib cage, which are usually, we over-index on using them. And then we'll get a little bit in the throat, and then we exhale the backwards. So it's and if you do that for a couple minutes, that will really help calm your body down. Now, if you need to build up energy, I recommend breathing in through the nose, out through the nose. That will really generate and build energy in your body. If you want to let go, I recommend nose, mouth. So, and then likewise, if you want to connect more to whether you want to call it the universe, nature, spirit, whatever word, Cookie Monster, whatever you want to call it. breath in the mouth, out the mouth, and doing it a little bit deeper and faster will really help connect things really quickly. That's one.
Yeah.
Breath is one of the ways that we do it. Movement is another one. Our bodies are really designed for movement, and I do realize the irony that all three of us are sitting while I'm talking about it. That movement will generate energy within our body. It'll naturally raise our physical vibration because the blood has to pump more. The energy of the neurology has to cycle itself faster. Everything will turn over. Using the breath and movement will change the way that our digestive system works. More and more people are having digestive issues, so that'll at least give a bonus to it. The third is using different questions and different conversations with yourself. So in the book that they mentioned that just came out, one of the chapters that I wrote is about reason versus purpose. I'm sure you all have heard the exact same thing, I'm going to let my opinion come out a little bit. The BS phrase of, well, everything happens for a reason. And just so you know, if you're ever with someone and you feel like you want to tell that to them, don't. It will not help.
Yeah.
If you're feeling the urge to tell them that, they cannot hear that.
That has never made me feel better, so I've never said it to anyone else.
Meaning, I've had it said, and I know it's coming from love. I know it's coming from the right place. The change of it is, everything happens for a purpose. The difference being is that I can give any number of reasons why Gavin, Brett, and I are talking this morning. Someone told me about the website that hooks up podcasters with guests. I'm promoting a new book. All these things. It happens to be July 5th, so it worked out well in everybody's timing. Those are all the reasons. I have no idea what the purpose is yet. When I'm either looking and waiting for the purpose to reveal itself or choosing to create the purpose behind something, it can reframe the way I'm looking at it. I think that's number 3. Number 4 is, just like everything, our bodies operate typically in either defense or growth at the same time. And if you want more info on that, Bruce Lipton's work is amazing. And if you hang out with a chiropractor long enough, we will recommend books to you. It's just the way we operate. I don't know why. And being growth or defense, or emotionally, mentally, personality-wise, we can be operating out of fear or out of love. So a question to ask yourself in any given situation is, what would love do? It's a really powerful question and can really change the way we operate in any given situation. The 5th, and the one that I do the most with people, is having someone take care of your neurospinal system, which is the brain, brainstem, spinal cord, all the wonderful nerves that come off of that, like the tree of life in our body, and all of the wonderful bones that support and protect this. Because it's this real, back to the duality conversation, it's soft and hard. It's relatively stiff and it's relatively unmoving. The bones are so powerful and fixed in terms of physical structure, and then the nerve system is constantly an electrical roller coaster all day long. So it's a really fun duality in our body. And what happens is, when we experience something that is too much, overwhelming, stressful, traumatic, an injury, our body goes, hey, this is really great, juicy info. Like, we can learn from this. Just like if you've ever seen a child learning how to walk, they will stumble and then they'll figure it out again and they'll try it again. We're always learning. We don't stop doing that after 3 or 4 years old. Our body we're just usually not in a position where we can integrate all of the experiences of life. So our body goes, no problem. I will hold on to this force frequency later, because whether it's a sound, a sight, a physical sensation, it's all frequency in our body.
Yeah.
I'll hold on to it. And the most easy, logical place to put it is the spine, because it moves so much. It has so many muscles and tendons and ligaments and fascia that attaches to it. We can store a lot of stuff using that as an anchor. And so our body will also use our spine like a big fuse box to intentionally diminish the amount of things it has to focus on short term. It's like if there's a power surge in your house, it'll flip a switch so that way it doesn't fry the microwave or your laptop. Yeah. This is a great short-term system. It was never designed to be the long-term solution, though. And so Vitalistic Chiropractic here is something that I realize I'm biased on this one, and really can help people move through those experiences, change the way the physiology is functioning, change the way the neurology and the way the brain is perceiving itself and controlling and coordinating everything, and get you a lot more energy and better sleep and a lot more movement, and affect and change the way that our emotional reality, our mental processes, and what I'm going to loosely term the greater aspects of who we are embody this physical, wonderful animal that we live in.
So would you say that the spine then is a lot of the places where things like stress or PTSD would be stored up in?
Yes, I would. A lot of all people often think that our mind is just in our head. Our brain is in our head.
Yeah.
Agreement with that. Our mind exists both in the physical body, in the cellular matrix we live in the ways that we've either adapted or not, contorted or not in our body, and in the electromagnetic field that our body generates. And so the spine just happens to be one of the best access points, because every experience we have, create, do, manifest, we live it through our nerve system. So the more clear, connected, balanced, and harmonious that becomes, the more clear, connected, balanced, and harmonious life becomes.
Yeah. Does it store good things as well, though? Like, so let's say like that feeling when you meet somebody or you do something significant happens in your life, to where 20 years later you hear a song that is so tied to that person or events that just for a split moment you remember exactly how you felt during that time.
Absolutely. And the more, again, the lower the interference, the more balance and harmony we have, the more we have access to all of that. The more we have access to those, in this case, kick-ass memory, pardon my language.
No, you're good. You get one F word.
Okay, I'll hold on to it for later.
Yes.
And the more access we get to those different gifts that we have to share, regardless of where we are in life and what we choose to do, we get more access to learn the lessons of our karma and be able to live our dharma or our sacred service to people around us. And so I haven't been asked that question, Gavin. I really like it, that we get to have more access to that. And it's part of why when you hear that song come on that was playing when you were at the roller skating rink and you held hands with your person for the first time, you feel the muscles get like kind of buzzing. You feel your heart beat faster in a good, fun way. You breathe more deeply. So it allows both of those things to happen.
It's like a drug almost.
The drug is you. I lovingly
exactly.
I'm for a series of seminars, and when we teach, I often say that when we're adjusting, when we're unlocking that bound up energy, that's the medicine they need, that their body can actually use to change the chemistry of the body, the hormone levels that Mama Gotti also kind of referred to earlier, that it changes so much of how we operate. It upgrades the operating system, so to speak. Brett, I feel like I cut you off. I apologize.
No, absolutely. I was just going to say that, for the most, I was bio pre-med for the first part of my college. And that was back when I was more in line or in tune with what I would say would be the pharmaceutical allopathic approach. Sure. And then I used to say that, chiropractors and podiatrists were those that couldn't make it through med school.
Heard it before.
Now, having grown tremendously in terms of the whole concept of the body mind, of frequencies, of what the holistic person is, you come to realize that, these things that, and I resonate very much with the Far Eastern religions and beliefs and the chi. And when you're working on the body, you're actually working on the chi. You're working on those energy fields within the body to relieve the blockages that are in the way and things along those lines. That's where, we bring together and I do it in a different way than you've got both the manual manipulation as well as the mental aspect of what you're doing. I think it's just so important for people nowadays to recognize that when you go in to see most physicians, they've been trained in a very specific way, funded by a very specific industry. And then
there's definitely times and places for it.
yes,
It's
yes.
in my opinion, it's overused, misused, and abused. Whereas other aspects, like it sounds like what Brett does, what I do, and what lots of others do, is misunderstood and underutilized.
Exactly. And this whole concept of body mind is truly important. And when people have a gut feeling, you really need to pay attention to that, because it is actually the second highest area of synapses in your body is right there. And even when you feel the tingling in your fingers, those are all part of your body mind. And it's important for us to really acknowledge it and understand it. And I think that that's a part that oftentimes people don't know about or recognize. And then my last thing here is this, that my belief is that the brain is the biggest, most powerful supercomputer available, and that everything that we've experienced in life is here. We just have to get more in tune with how to recall it or how to control it, as opposed to just having this information in there that gets triggered at times, that then all of a sudden comes back to us, oftentimes in a rush or a flood or whatever. But up to that point, we didn't even acknowledge it or know it was there.
A friend of mine, and I really love the way he phrases this, it says that every outward version of technology that we have, including the many pieces of technology we are all currently using to do this podcast, is a reflection of the different technologies we have within us. And there's a lot to it. And as people become more and more aware of that, or at least open to the concept, then we start to actually experience life being in us, working for us, working with us and through us, rather than something that just throws dodgeballs at us. And as that starts to happen, everything starts to shift, and doesn't always make it. There's still challenges that we face. There's still occasionally pains that we have to deal with. There's still unpacking of all the baggage. And if anyone doesn't have any, I can lend you some. I got plenty. It's a lifelong pursuit to eventually unpack it all. And, it's just a matter of how do we, as that starts to happen, we get to be more of who we really are. And that becomes, and as more and more people start to do that, and I see, especially in the last year and a half, I look at this as being, yes, an unbelievably rough last 16, 18 months. And also, to me, it appears to be one of the greatest spiritual awakenings we've ever gotten, that humanity's had and gotten to witness. Yeah. And part of that is processing all the shadow, or processing all the stuff, which is part of what's all been coming up for the last bunch of months.
Yeah, I think what Jay Bird is saying here actually kind of sums up a lot of what we're talking about in a pretty good way, where we're saying, the brain is a switching station. It's a stem. It's a connector. It's a surge protector. All of our inputs, garbage in, garbage out, the good stuff, thoughts become actions, actions become real. Our perceptions become reality. I think that, it's really kind of tying a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about together in a pretty concise way.
Mm-hmm. One of a teacher that I've had for a long time, his name is Pasquale Sarasoli. He unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. He was, and I'm going to attempt to do his thick Brooklyn accent. He said, "Thoughts are things," meaning that our thoughts affect. You ever watch the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, with like Drew Carey and Ryan Stiles, and back in the day, it was on when I was like a kid. They were fond of saying everything's made up and the points don't matter. Where it's, I like to view it as welcome to Earth, where everything's your co-creation and your thoughts do matter. And
yeah, absolutely.
We seem to
kind of going in a little bit different direction. I see that you've created the foundation Carthage World Relief, an organization to provide clean water for developing world. Just to let you know, I grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, so I know the area very well. Actually, when I go back, my girlfriend actually lives in Vernon Hills, and we drive up to Petrifying Springs in order to get water.
Okay, yeah.
From a source that I think is fuller and cleaner in a way that we don't get from the faucet.
Well, Brett, next time you're in this area, please stop by. It'd be great to meet you in person because I'm real close to Vernon Hills.
Yeah, no, I absolutely know that. In fact, a buddy of mine that I went to college with, he's a dentist, or was a dentist in Arlington Heights, Tommy Ugia. Just amazing people around there. So I know the area. Definitely will stop by there. But I want to kind of get, more of, what you're doing with your nonprofit and how you came to form that, and get that out there so everybody gets a chance to hear about it.
Absolutely. And to be clear, and just for clarity, I'm not running it myself anymore. What happened going back 10 years now, somehow it's been, 11 years. So Carthage College, where I went to undergrad, they do a series of January term trips. You can either go do January term next to Lake Michigan in January, or they have different trips set up. And one of the ones they've run for, I think, close to 20 years is a medical mission trip. It was an exclusively medical mission trip. So it was run by Patrick Foffel and Matt Zorn, one of whom is a biologist, one of whom is a geography professor. And you go and you alternate days working in medical clinics in the most, when people think of third world medical clinics, that's what it is, and climbing volcanoes. So it's a blast. And one of the last days that my group was there in 2010, 2011, somewhere in there, I think 2011, pardon me. In one of the last nights we were there, we had this big discussion, and we all came to the same conclusion, which was that it's not a lack of antibiotics, antivirals, or antiparasitics on the island that is getting people sick. Those all help them once they are sick, but it was a sincere lack of clean water. And we knew that this trip was going to keep running at that point twice a year. It sometimes goes 3 times a year, and it gets students so fired up. So what we decided to do was we did a benefit concert. We did a bracelet sale of like woven bracelets from an orphanage down there. We got pottery from down there. So we did a number of different fundraisers while I was in school. We also created a nonprofit, which was then, it's still, the Carthage World of Relief is sort of the student-run aspect of it, and then the professors got together with a group of water engineers through one of the students on my trip was a mutual connection, and they eventually managed to get property on the island. And so we wanted to make as big an impact as we could, and B, we wanted to leave a way for future students who go on this trip to have an easy way to do a bracelet sale, to do a 5K, to do whatever they wanted to do. And it's still running today. It got a little beat down last year because of everything going on, but it's going to start ramping itself back up again. And while in the past 10 years, we've managed to get property on the island, create, it's called Finca Esperanza, which is Spanish for Hope Ranch, essentially, or Ranch of Hope. And we have clean water technology on that portion of it, and we're work with the local governments down there to figure out how do we get more around on the island, because it's where we go is the island of Ometepe, which if you've ever watched Survivor, you know that word.
Yes.
From Nicaragua. Yeah, my man.
I almost got on that show, actually. A little side story.
That's cool.
I sent in a audition form, and then I got a phone call, and then I had to send in an audition tape, but they wanted it shot in a crazy low resolution for whatever reason that my phone just could not do. Like, I have a modern phone, and so I ended up not being able to do the actual video audition for the show. I was very upset about it. But one day I'm going to get on there.
I'm going to watch the show and be like, I know that guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's still running today. And I so recommend traveling for everybody, when we can, especially when we can get to other cultures and other countries again, because it really changes and transforms your view on the country the country we live in, the way we live our lives. And, I've gone back a couple times now. Most recent time was in January of 2020, right before everything stopped. And, when I'm down there, I do I serve people with chiropractic, and people are coming to see me, and I've been there enough times that people, like, we know each other, which is really cool. But it's also really amazing because people are coming and they at best make $1 a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they come and bring you oranges. Like they have next to nothing in terms of resources, and they're sharing it with me out of gratitude, which again gets back to our conversation about giving and receiving as a really fun, poignant example. But it's also really amazing just to meet people and talk to them and just hear how grateful they are. Not even, yes, for the fact that me and the students and the water engineers, that we're all there doing our thing, but also just because just how much gratitude they have for life and being alive, period, which is something that is, I feel, myself included, more and more people, the more we access that gratitude for being alive and for life and life being within us, the more things can start to shift and change.
Have you ever heard of the philosophy to die before you die?
Say more, because probably.
Yeah. So it basically it goes on with the saying, "You don't know what you have till it's gone," and the meaning of that being that to be able to truly experience life, to be able to truly appreciate everything that it has to offer, you have to die in a sense before you physically die. And a lot of people do that through traumatic experiences, extreme difficult tasks, and psychedelics is a very popular way that they used to do it. Back in Greek times, they would have the higher ups in the government. They would go to this very sacred temple to quote unquote meet God, and it's theorized that they would go there and they would take these psychedelic drugs that would give them these visions and these hallucinogenic experiences, where in a sense they would die without actually dying. Then it would allow them to be better leaders because they would have a better understanding of what it means to live.
I haven't heard it phrased that particular way, but I totally understand and get where it's coming from.
Yeah.
The great bonus that we have now is that we don't necessarily need to use tools like that, because at the time, the energy on the planet and the dimensions were so spaced out that you needed different tools to be able to access different realms of consciousness, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's, we all have, we can do it with breath, kind of like what I was saying earlier, not only physically, but dimensionally and energetically. We can do it with breath. We can do it with massage, getting adjusted, being out in nature, playing with kids, playing with puppies. We can do it in so many different ways. We just part of it is we have to allow ourselves, and part of it is the foundational aspects of how we interact with all these different things. And so it's kind of like people, I understand why people use psychedelics still. I like to describe it as it's a really powerful window, not a great doorway, because you can see things, but actually being able to embody them here, it's challenging. Plus, anytime you leave your body, you're pretty likely to have parasitic company when you come back. We can get into that more later, but it's more a matter of you can see them. But I want everything embodied here. I came here for this physical experience. More so, if I want to have consistent access to those higher levels of consciousness or the miracles that can happen with them, I want them in my physical body. I want miracles manifesting here. And so the nice thing is people can use it. We don't necessarily have to, because we're so connected to spirit naturally now. It'd be like me saying, Gavin, sit down. No, sit down. You're not sitting. Sit down. And you're like, I am.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it's like.
Yeah. I really like how you said parasitic things coming back, just because. So I know a lot of people who have done mushrooms. I know a lot of people who have done acid, and more so sometimes with mushrooms, but more so with people who I know have dropped acid. They always come back telling me that a lot of times they experience some sort of PTSD or demon from it, where they have like trouble sleeping, they see crazy things when they close their eyes, they're having a lot of issues mentally and spiritually recovering from these bad trips that they're having.
Yeah, it's and if this isn't anyone's particular brand of reality, then cool. It's a fun story we're saying. When you do things that are psychedelic in nature like that, it can and most often will fracture the boundaries between different dimensions. And there's the way I would to phrase it is, we're a lot more than our physical body, and we're the vast majority of us undisciplined in how to navigate it, and that becomes challenging.
So do you teach? Do you ever teach your students or patients how to respond rather than react?
To that specifically, or in general?
in general, but the question was inspired by that specifically.
Cool. Just want to make sure I knew the question.
Yes.
Yes, and that's a big distinction. Most of us, and myself included at times, we don't give ourselves the moment to actually breathe, make sure we're in center, that we didn't get lodged into the past or flung forward into the future. Which, if we get, and some key ways to know is that if we get flung towards the past, we will feel oftentimes sad, anger, rage, betrayal, things of that nature. Whereas if we get flung forward, that's where we start to feel fear and anxiety more and more and more. So are we still centered? Are we still in, like, am I dealing with what is the current issue, not what my dad said to me 20 years ago that this reminded me of? Give yourself the time, and also with regards to your body, is it in just a pure state of reactivity, or is it being able to process everything not just through the lowest part of our brain, which is the lizard brain, which is the part which is where fight or flight hangs out and will, like, its primary goal is survival? Or are you actually accessing the limbic system, which is memory and emotion? Are you accessing the upper parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is often called the angel lobes? Are you accessing all of these things physiologically? And when you are, it makes it so much easier to actually respond. Sometimes with anger, I will grant you that, but actually, have a conscious choice. Have it be a conscious decision to, depending on what's going on.
It's a controlled flame.
Yeah, I think, CK is bringing some of that up here, where you're talking about thoughts and actions in the heart, and what comes from our heart speak from our mouth. We really do have to look at how all of these interact, but recognize that responding versus reacting is really kind of going from more of, like you were saying, the lizard brain to the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex, that type of thing, where we actually have that ability as a human. And I think that there is also some of that even in animals, where they do have a conscious ability to control kind of where their focus is and what their reactions would be. And I think that, tying into even this whole concept of dying before you die and breath, this whole concept of wearing masks has really interfered with our psychological ability to breathe as well. Mm-hmm. We have tended to go more toward that shallow breath, more toward that fear of breath, mm-hmm. because of what you think you might be getting. That has had, I think, maybe, as you were talking about, maybe one of the greatest spiritual openings or in time has to do with almost kind of dying, because we have gone so much afraid of breathing.
And the flip of it, the bonus of it is it forced all of us to be in our eyes.
Yes.
Especially when we're wearing the mask, we have to make eye contact. We have to be in our eyes, focusing intently with each other. And that really changes the nature of how we communicate and how we interact with each other and how we connect with each other. Now, with regards to the masks and the breathing, one thing that I see a lot is a lot of the front neck muscles, collarbone, ribs, and the front of the neck, like the front of the spine being pulled, because all these muscles got overworked last year. Combined with, when you have something over it will trigger a low grade, in most people, a low grade fight or flight response. It's not enough to send most into a full blown panic attack, but it can and will trigger that part of the brain. And because the body, above all else, will do whatever it has to survive. If you need evidence, just watch 127 Hours with James Franco, like chopping his own arm off. Like,
great movie, true story.
Yep. Yes, a true story of. Sorry, spoilers. For a 15-year-old movie. That is a true story of what the body will do to survive. The tricky part is when we get so fixated physiologically, neurologically on that survival, we lose access to everything else, and we try and filter everything through those lower parts of the brain, which limits their ability to do the healing work that they're designed to do. Lizards, as an example, are amazing healers. You step on their tail, they'll run away, they'll build a new one.
Yeah.
Question, why can't we? We've got a more powerful brain. Or so we like to think. So it's as we start to calm the nervous system down. And in the work I do and my friend, many of my colleagues do, it can be as light pressure as this much, as if you were testing an avocado for how ripe it is, in the right time, at the right space, in the right way to help the system shift. Because we're starting to get into a point for humanity where it's starting to become more exponential. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 11 equals 111. You get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So it's starting to really shift, and that's how the body works. It's very exponential in that way.
So that makes me wonder and think, would doing something like, well, I'll let you answer Mama Gotti really quick, and then I'll go on with mine.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up is I think that some of what I'll call you doctor, what the doctor was talking about is about how to kind of clear out some of these parasitic things.
Mm-hmm. So some of it can be facilitated. Every time we raise our vibration, we limit the energetic ports where parasitic energies can hook in. I'm assuming you're asking about more energetic parasites rather than physical.
Yeah.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, if that's
Yeah.
a solution. So every time we do anything to raise our vibration, that helps. That can cause things to detach. There are myself and one of my master teachers named Susan Rossi. She and I both teach boundaries classes, which are part of at the end. It's not technically part of boundaries, but once we get you in boundaries and we have you, sealed in boundaries to contain your beautiful life force energy, we don't want to leave you in there with junk. So typically at the end, there are protocols that I put, multidimensional protocols that I put in place in your field for you that are consistent, automatic and consistent for the rest of time in the human experience, that will kick them out, and B, make it so they can't get back. As your vibration gets higher and as your boundaries get stronger and stronger and stronger, they won't be able to hook in anymore. If your vibration ever does get low, or you have to go under anesthesia for whatever reason, that can cause them to grab on. But once you come back, once you raise your vibration back up, they kick back in. I know I'm teaching one in August. As soon as I have the event page for it, because I'll probably do it both live and online. I'm happy to throw it in the comment section on the YouTube video if that's cool with you.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. We'd love that.
Yeah, I have a couple of classes coming up that are pay what you can, that are specifically to rewrite our belief systems around health and healing. So I'll throw that in the comments too, if that's cool with y'all.
Yeah. We're coming up towards the end of the episode here, actually. So anything that you want to plug in, now's the time, man. What do you got? I know you said you got a book that you're going to be publishing, right? Or you're promoting.
It is officially out. It is. I'll throw it, if you guys are cool with it. I'm just going to really flood the comment section with links.
Go ahead, dude. Put it in there.
So the book is called Letters to Our Younger Selves: A Combat Manual for Mindful Living. It started off last year kind of as a running joke when I was in Nicaragua. Paul Martino, who's one of my co-authors, he's one of the professors who now runs the trip, and we just kept agreeing on everything for the whole week. We would talk, and we'd be in just such agreement that we kept joking, like, we should write a book. And we got back, and he was serious about it. I was too. It was just sort of like a one-day thing. He was like, no, let's do it this year. And as last year happened, we all had a little time on our hands. So we wrote, the main kind of premise of the book is, if you could write a letter through time to you, what would you want to say? What advice would you want to give? What encouragement would you want to give? What different perspective would you want to give to your younger self? And so we each wrote somewhere between 9 and 11 of them. And so we put them together. And I may be biased, but I think it's pretty good. And I get into a lot of the mindful physiology, dimensionality stuff of things. They bring their unique aspects. They're both PhDs in physiology, so they bring a lot of different perspective to it. There's some fun overlap and some fun differences, and we all have a slightly different writing style. So that's on, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, and on BookBaby, which is the publisher. So that's on there. And again, we wrote it and designed it to be like, in a long plane ride, you could read it. You could read it in a weekend. Awesome. Or you could read it in chunks, because it's all written as letters. So you could read one a day for a couple months and, have fun with it that way. But it's a very easy read. We like simple and easy, not dramatic and challenging.
I like that a lot, because in all honesty, I kind of suck at reading. I can read well and I can read out loud well, but if I try to sit down and read a book, I'll fall asleep within 5 minutes most of the time.
Well, Gavin, this is the perfect book for you then.
Wonderful. And I'm very interested in the topics that you have for it as well. So I'll definitely be ordering and reading it.
Awesome. A lot of my chapters are answer Mama Gotti's question about raising your vibration.
Nice.
I don't specifically call it that, but that's kind of what it is. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Innate Life Chiro or Innate Life Chiropractic. I post fun stuff on there. Some of it is based on physiology. Some of it is inspiring stories. Some of it is more information about you, because most of us don't know a whole lot about our body. And I like to try and amend that, or just gently offer you a different perspective of how to view life and how to view your body. Yeah. And the class and again, those classes I have coming up, I'll set the date for, I think it's gonna be August 8th is the Boundaries one. And then I will also be doing, over the next couple months, I'm doing this class where it's a quickening work. So we rewrite the belief systems we carry around, specifically about health, healing, well-being, being in our body, being worthy of healing and health, being able to create it. Because as we've talked on several times, belief systems are a thing. And I have a technology that's really a safe, gentle, easy way to rewrite them. They're going to be on Zoom, and I consider it Spirit's been like bugging me to do these classes. So I'm doing it as pay what you can. If that's $2, if that's $50, whatever it is for you. Because I realize everyone's in such a unique state right now. But I consider these topics so vital that I'm choosing to do it that way.
That's such an awesome way to provide a service if you're able to do it that way, to a pay what you can, because you do tend to find that there are people who need it, who give a little, and then who want it, who give a bit of amount. And there are some people where they don't give anything, but overall, from what I've heard, it's fair overall, and it makes you feel good.
Yeah, and like the Boundaries class is a set fee, but it's very affordable. I think it's $65 if you're doing it for the first time. Repeating it, it's less. So, because again, in both Susan and I, we often do them together. We do bear classes. Once a year we'll do a rage class, which is a 2-day long healing excavation of your emotional body. We do one called Quantum Leap, which is really fun, and it's kind of a multidimensional marathon. And I'm also an instructor for MLS seminars. So if any chiropractors happen to be watching, or chiropractic students, all about how do we deliver this promise of everything that we've been talking about, deliver these principles of life with your own two hands. And so if you want to connect with me or come play, for anyone in that field, it's MLSadjustingseminars.com, as Jeff Dunham would say.
Awesome. Well, we've kind of come to the end of the show here. I did get a chance to post your website and your Facebook out in the chat section so that people have access to that, and you can definitely look up the information easily that way. The way that we end the show is to provide, one final thoughts that are going to leave our audience with, positivity, things that they can use to improve their life and so forth. And we'll start off with Gavin taking the first shot and me, and we'll wrap it up with your final thoughts, and then we'll close out the show.
All right. So what I would like to take from today's episode and give to you is that finding yourself and who you are is a puzzle that you have to put together on your own. However, it does not mean that you need to create and find all the pieces on your own. If you're trying to figure out who you want to be, if you're trying to figure out what you want to do, reach out to others. Say yes to new experiences. Find help from those who are going on similar journeys or similar paths, or sometimes the exact opposite path. But the point is to continue to live in a rich variety of lives, not just one, and then take bits and pieces from those lives and put them together into your version of your perfect life. It is your puzzle. It's yours to put together, but the pieces come from everybody else.
For me, it's kind of taking what we talked about with the Joker and the portrayal and the beliefs that the Joker tended to take on in order to get him to be the maniacal or that very hypersensitive, hyper-observant person, is to recognize that we do have control as to what we focus on in life. And one of the best ways in order to be able to refocus, especially if we're starting to head down a spiral, and we do need to pay attention to ourselves in order to feel when we're going in this direction, is to breathe, is to use your physiology to be able to make that change before you're spiraling so far down that you don't even recognize that you're doing so. Take that opportunity to re-ground yourself, to breathe deeply and exhale those toxins that your body is trying to get out of your system, both from a physiological and a mental state, coming out with your breath, and open yourself up to a new, brighter way of looking at that same event that you just thought was taking you down into a deep area that you don't want to get to. The Joker is an amazing character to pay attention to and to learn from, but we don't have to go in that direction. We have a choice. And I wish that everybody use their breath and their physiology as their first response to being able to spiral up as opposed to spiral down.
I first learned to unmute myself. You are a unique expression of infinite intelligence, and you're perfect exactly as you are. And we could all use a little improvement. And I think that's one of the most optimistic messages I can leave you with. Optimism being acknowledging that there might be weeds in the garden, but also acknowledging that we can prune them and that we can create a healthier, more vital, joyful future. And that everything that you have a need to do that is within you. And there are a number of different ways and resources to access it. But the power is really within you. And because you're enough, and you always have been.
Oh. There we go. Thank you all so much to everybody who watched today. Dr. Nathan, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolutely wonderful conversation. We would most definitely love to have you on the show again in the future. Once again, my name is Gavin Kerr, Brett Gordon, and the best way to support us is by sharing word of mouth. Thank you everybody who liked, subscribed, and commented. We had some great comments today. We will see you all again tomorrow, bright and early, same time, same place.
And Doctor, hang on there. We'll talk to you just a hair after the show.
Sounds good. Thank you all so much.